Hey everybody, Rich Stroffolino here with Gestalt IT and wanted to talk to you about a recent report that came out regarding Docker. It came out earlier this week that Docker is talking to two new investors to raise some much needed cash. According to CEO Rob Bearden, I realize that uncertainty brings with it significant challenges, and I want to thank each of you for persevering in spite of the lack of clarity we've had these past few weeks. This is from a company that's really seen as a tech unicorn. They've been valued at over $1 billion as of 2017, and according to Crunchbase, has raised over $270 million so far. To see them needing to raise a new round of funding now, given the narrative surrounding the company, is pretty disturbing. When I first started at Gestalt IT back in late 2016, two things were really emphasized to me as I got familiar with the IT landscape. One, that containers were the new hotness, and two, that Docker was the most containery of container companies. At the time, I really thought DockerCon was going to become one of those huge shows that rivals VMworld or Cisco Live, where there's really entire industries based around it. In 2019, not so much. So what happened? One of the reasons the narrative changed around Docker undoubtedly has to do with the emergence of Kubernetes. Let's face it, if you followed IT news over the past couple of years, you'll know that Kubernetes hasn't just eaten the world, it's through 3 courses and starting on dessert. There's no better indicator of this than VMware's recent announcement of Project Pacific, the re-architecture of vSphere to better integrate the container orchestrator. In contrast, Docker for far too long championed their own Swarm orchestrator. Though they've seen the writing on the wall now and are firmly in the Kubernetes bandwagon, they held on to Swarm way too long after the dominance of Kubernetes was pretty self-evident. No matter how much of an industry darling unicorn you are, going up against a Google-backed project, even one as obtuse as Kubernetes, was always going to be a tough road to hoe. So can we chalk up Docker's current state to as simple as choosing the wrong orchestrator? Not quite. Looking at the fundamentals of Docker's business, their long-term viability was always going to be up in the air. One of the reasons Docker enjoyed such a positive media narrative over the last couple of years was their container tech was quality and it was open source, meaning you could muck around to it to your heart's content. I know I installed it for free. This brought them a lot of users, however, the company has always struggled to turn those into paying customers. Docker then scaled its operations without ever solving that fundamental problem. It was always going to be a pain point for them somewhere down the road. Losing the battle over orchestration just moved that to the fore. There was also some frustration from within the open source community about how Docker handled itself as an open source project. There were accusations that the company blocked some commitments, and really an overall feeling that the company was very heavy-handed with management that turned people off and led to less commitments overall for the project. It's hard to quantify how this fits into their bottom line and where the company is now, but definitely a factor. So is Docker just doomed to a slow decline as it desperately seeks more and more funding rounds to keep going? I don't think the situation is quite so dire. For one, according to analysts, Docker has over 800 Docker Enterprise subscribers in 2019. That compares well to other open source and container companies. And they hit the revenue targets of almost $100 million in revenue in 2018. The company has definitely had its fair share of corporate turnover. They've had 3 CEOs since 2017. But it seems like now they have a firm strategy for how to turn themselves around. They're now operating out of the assumption that an organization is using Kubernetes as a substrate, and they plan to offer services on top of that, whether we're talking about for developers, CI/CD, or security. They're also working with Microsoft, HashiCorp, and Bitnami on the Cloud Native Application Bundle, which they've integrated into its Docker app to essentially collect services together into a modular application bundle. It's a really interesting new direction for the company, and I think it can get a lot of traction, especially with those partners. So Docker is telling us they have plans to turn around the battleship, but the question is, will they have enough gas to do it? Let's face it, they are firmly out of unicorn status now at this point. And while they have a path toward viability as a company, that's not necessarily going to satisfy a lot of investors who want a return on investment, especially on those early stage investments. We'll see if they have enough time to complete that turnaround. For Gestalt IT, I'm Rich Stroffolino. Thanks for watching. And remember to like and subscribe this video. Take it easy.